My maternal family used to run a chicken farm in Shermaine, but it's been closed for years. Every summer break, my mother, my sister, my younger brother, and I would travel there while my father stayed home for work. Located in the quiet hills of Oki District, Shermaine, the area boasted beautiful nature, a perfect picture of Japan's rural past. For a week, we would play in the countryside, doted on by our grandparents. Life there was simple, with my grandfather and grandmother rising at 4 a.m. to feed the chickens and manage the farm before the rooster crowed. By 5 p.m., their work was done, and by 7 p.m. they would be dozing off with a drink in hand. For us kids, though, getting into bed at 8 p.m. wasn't so easy. With thoughts of the river we played in that day or plans for tomorrow buzzing through my head, sleep wouldn't come easily. One night, staring at the dark beams of the ceiling, I heard the sliding doors of the adjacent tatami room creak open. Footsteps echoed along the hallway. The front door clicked open, then shut. Lying there half awake, I soon heard the grandfather's clock strike 12. Not long after, the front door opened again, sandals shuffled on the hallway floorboards, and the person returned to the tatami room. It must have been Grandpa or Grandma checking on the chickens or the fields. With that thought in my head, I eventually drifted off. The next night, the same thing happened. Every night, someone would leave around 11:30 p.m. and return at 12:05 a.m. Curious, I asked my sister and brother about it, but neither of them had noticed anything. Being a kid fascinated by anything the adults were up to, I decided to stay awake one night and see for myself. On the 5th night, I kept still during the day and saved my energy. I fought off the drowsiness until I heard the faint creak of the front door. Quickly slipping on my sandals, I followed. I saw my grandfather heading toward the hatchery, a small building about 50 meters from the main house. The hatchery was where they incubated eggs and raised the chicks. I followed him inside. The room was dimly lit, with only the faint glow of a brooder lamp shining through. Grandpa carefully examined the incubator. Then he picked out 3 eggs and smashed them into a metal bin. Startled, I blurted out, "What are you doing?" Grandpa, just as shocked, gave a nervous laugh. "You scared me, kid. Just dealing with some bad ones." When I asked him what he meant by bad ones, he explained that not every chick should hatch. Some chicks are bad. If you don't remove them, it could spell trouble. He grabbed another egg from the incubator. Curious, I peered in closer. "Don't look at it," he yelled. "It could hurt your eyes." Quickly, he smashed the egg into the bin. I caught a glimpse of the cracked shell, the faint movement of something inside. The thought of what lay in the bin sent shivers down my spine. As Grandpa checked his watch, he muttered, "It's past midnight. Let's head back." On our way out, I noticed what looked like a toy near the hatchery door. But I was too tired and scared to investigate further. I decided I'd check it out in the morning. That night, I shared Grandpa's futon and finally fell asleep. The next morning, I remembered the toy-like object I'd seen near the hatchery. When I went back to look with my brother, it turned out to be a mirror painted bright red, a small clay ox, and some cheap plastic flowers. They weren't toys at all. Their purpose was a mystery. I also took a closer look at the bin from the night before. The lid was covered in old, unreadable writing on aged paper. When I opened the hatchery incubator, I saw it, a chick. Or something that should have been a chick. It didn't tremble or chirp like the others. Its eyes weren't a chick's eyes. They were human. It fell from the incubator and walked off, moving steadily without a hint of hesitation. I stood frozen, unable to react, as it disappeared to the west. When I finally came to, I looked over at my brother. He was drooling and unresponsive. I called out to him, but he wouldn't answer. Grandpa rushed in, eyes blazing, demanding to know, "What did you see?" Terrified, I said, "Nothing." But he saw through my lie. With an urgency I'd never seen, he grabbed the clay ox and flowers and dashed out the door. Meanwhile, Grandma whispered, it looked into his eyes. It saw him. I handed Grandma the red-painted mirror and she told me to go outside. When I returned to my mother, I couldn't bring myself to explain what had happened. Then I saw my brother again. It was him, but something was off. He spoke, laughed, remembered everything from before. Yet, he felt different. My mother wept, and so did my sister. I just watched, unsure of what to believe. Grandpa came back later, shaking his head. I didn't make it in time, he said. He muttered about a funeral, and Grandma began preparing mourning clothes. Grandpa hugged my brother, tears streaming down his face. From his words, I gathered that some chicks were born at special times, moments that made them different. Some are meant for roles beyond our world. Grandpa told me. If they hatch at the wrong time, they must be stopped. I asked if those born at night also become what he called the Higiou. No, he replied. There's something far more frightening. Grandpa glanced nervously at the hatchery. And that was the last he said about it. Years later, as a high schooler, I asked a friend from a farming family about the Higiou. Oh, you mean the spoken for chicks, he said casually. By then, modern farms used automated systems to handle the eggs, ensuring nothing unusual ever hatched. Every summer since then, I have continued to return to Shermaine. My brother is now an elementary school teacher and is doing well. I can no longer remember what he was like before that summer. But that's okay. For over 20 years, he has lived as part of our family. Now, he is completely one of us. That is the entirety of what happened back then. Through that summer's experience, we came to understand that beyond what we can see, there may always... Since then, my family has continued to live happily, filled with smiles and warmth. Yet, even after all these years, a strange feeling remains deep within me. But in the end, I have come to accept that this too is simply a part of life.